I make videos. Quite a few, actually. I've been doing it for a while and I'd like to think I'm pretty good at it. I've had some comments before asking how exactly I go about the whole process. Shout out to Snugpig Gaming, sorry it took me 3 months to do something with it. So I thought I'd run you through how to assemble what I think is a pretty entertaining and educational devlog video for the indie game that you're making. So, let's talk video design. First things first, I need to clarify something for you. This isn't going to be a tutorial about how to use a specific piece of software. I'm not an expert on Adobe Premiere or anything, which is largely because I don't actually use Premiere at all. I use a program called Cyberlink Power Director. Why? Because I'm old, and it's something I'm used to. It's almost definitely not the best one, and I think if you're going to start from scratch, maybe go follow some tutorials on Premiere instead. Having said that, what I'm about to tell you applies to any video editing software at all, because it's more about how to structure your devlog in a way that's hopefully entertaining for people. Also, this video is going to be full of other people's footage that I've stolen, borrowed. Them being in this video isn't a critique or anything, these are literally just all people I subscribe to who I think do a really good job of making devlogs. I'll list all of their channels in the description below, so if you see someone you like the look of, go check them out. I'd recommend them all anyway, to be honest, and if any of them see this, I hope you don't mind being included in this video. I do this out of love and cheap, lazy content creation. Anyway, here we go. First thing you're going to want to do is decide which type of devlog you're going to want to make. But Zane, I hear you ask, isn't there only one type of devlog? No, and stop interrupting me, it's not question time yet, shush. There are, as far as I'm concerned, two different types of devlogs, which I've called technical and design. I'll let you guess which one I, the guy from Let's Talk Game Design, know more about. I'm sure you can figure it out. This is the one that I know the least about because I don't actually make them. I do, however, watch a fair few of them, and I think it's a style that might benefit some of you, so I'll share what I know. A technical devlog is one that's focused on the technical aspects of game development. Things like the code you're writing, the processes you're following, the engine you're using. They're really popular with people who are also writing code, following processes and using engines. And they're the easiest type of devlog to update consistently, since your content is made sort of automatically every time you do something. To make a success out of this kind of devlog, it's easier if you can try and think about making them as you go along, rather than coming back to it once you've made some great milestone and assembling the process backwards. Get your screen recorder of choice loaded up in the background while you're working. I use OBS and I'd recommend you do too. And take clips or even full-blown hour-long recordings as you work, taking in the process and, crucially, what that process does. Even with the kinds of people who enjoy technical devlogs, you don't want to just fill 15 minutes of airtime with real-time footage of you typing code into a text editor. That's not to say there isn't value in that, it's just that's probably very specific, and I'd imagine there's a comparatively small number of people for whom that's their jam. Instead, you want to do something, maybe speed up the footage of you doing it, and then show the results of what you've done. This is visually the most impressive part. Generally speaking, your audience wants to follow your thought process and technical struggles or competence, rather than the actual code you're writing. So focusing on the results rather than the code itself is going to give them the biggest possible window into what it is you're doing. Talk about things like the method you've used to accomplish your feature, what struggles and challenges you faced in implementing it, and how you overcame them. Imagine you're having a job interview for a coding position at your favourite AAA studio of choice, and they've asked you to run them through your last big project. You want to sound impressive, even if what you've done isn't actually that difficult for you. A thing to remember here is that when it comes to technical devlogs, they don't have to be pristine. You don't have to be as good a coder as John Carmack. It's okay and even preferable if you've struggled a little bit. Broadly speaking, as much as people like to see confidence and competence in their devlogs, they also like people who are humanized. Even though I don't do technical devlogs, I will still occasionally list things that I found challenging in the process and things that I can't do, because it balances out the confidence and frankly sometimes arrogance, more on that later, that I mostly fill my videos with. The struggle keeps you human, so don't be afraid of it. Like I said, I don't do technical devlogs, so I'm kind of limited in how I can help. But broadly, what you want to aim for is a linear storyline to your video. Start with something you wanted to do and end with whether you achieved it or not, what the final result looks like. This will make sure you've always got a steady stream of something to show off. My favourite example of a technical devlog producer is Mrs. who wastes absolutely no time in showing off what it is he's doing, what he wants to do, and what that looks like when it's done. So I'd recommend going to watch his entire devlog series of his Steam games if you want more inspiration. And now a word from our sponsor. Hello, I'm our sponsor. I wanted to come to you today to let you know that I have another channel. It's called Game Stuff. And on Game Stuff, we talk game stuff. It's a very new channel, And I was hoping that you, being amazing and brilliant and wonderful and lovely, would go over there, check it out, subscribe, share with all your friends, make it the most popular channel on YouTube, get me rich and famous so I can buy a boat. This has been a word from our sponsor. Thanks, our sponsor. So I've just said a lot of words about something I don't really know how to do. So imagine how much pointless rambling I'm going to do about... here we go. My wheelhouse. A design devlog is focused less and sometimes not at all on the process of how you've made something, and much more on the why. What you're looking for here is decisions you've made, either in the actual game design or artistically and in general, how you arrived at those decisions and what that ends up doing. You're still ideally looking for something linear where you've aimed for a specific thing, but unlike a technical devlog, you don't want to show off how you tried to accomplish it. Instead, you want to talk about what brought you to do that in the first place, what your thought process was, and how it's going to affect the quality of your game. You might not even be able to show off the results yet. As an example, at the time that I'm writing this, the last devlog on my current project is all about what makes a good twin-stick shooter, because that's what I'm making. But it doesn't end with me showing off, hey look, a good twin-stick shooter, because I won't know if it is any good until I finish the thing and get it on Steam. The way these are structured is much less about what you've done, and much more about what you'd like to do, and for that reason it doesn't really matter as much if you record your process along the way. This can be good for what professionals call B-roll footage, as in stuff you can just put on in the background while you're talking, but you don't necessarily need it. You can, if you want, and this is something I do quite a lot, come back to your game when you're ready to actually make the video, and purposefully record bits that reinforce the point you're trying to make in your devlog. If you look back through the devlogs I've made so far, you'll notice the titles and thumbnails of them all reference something that makes up the main purpose of that specific video. Graphics, level design, cancelling my game, sound and music, cancelling my game again, player feedback and critique, that time I cancelled my game. They're all specific topics that we explore in that video through the lens of the game that I'm making. You don't necessarily have to have a purpose to each video. You can, if you want, treat it like a technical devlog, but if you're not particularly interested in the coding side of things, talk about the decisions you've made along the way instead. Ben Bonk and his game Slime Keeper are a good example of this. It's not filled to the brim with the technical aspects, but it does chronicle choices and features that he's made since the last video, in a way that's visually very appealing and presented in a sort of linear fashion, to the point that if you put them all together in a playlist, you'd find a pretty structured timeline of how the game went from nothing to where it is now. If you want to be like me and make LTGD style devlogs, the first thing you need to do is go back to 1987, be born, then spend your formative years as a child playing video games and being a social outcast. Have you done that? Great. Sorry you're depressed now. Seriously though, a big part of design devlogs is that you specifically, as the person creating the thing, need to find your voice and personality for how you specifically want to present the game you're making. There's no point trying to be me or anyone else. And definitely, for the love of God, please don't try and be Danny, because I imagine in a year's time you'll look back on what you've made and cringe yourself into oblivion. With design devlogs, and you know this because you're on my channel, the audience is going to want to know why and not how. I stick to that, and I think I do it pretty well. And if you disagree, you should probably realise that you're watching a video about how to make devlogs, and I haven't talked once about how to actually make a devlog and told you to just go watch a tutorial on Premiere. And I've instead tricked you into listening to why I make devlogs and what my methods are behind them. See, you fell for it, you're still here. Clearly it works. So those are the two main forms of a devlog as I see them, and how you might approach making either one. Now I should probably give you some general advice that applies to whatever kind of devlog, or even just whatever kind of video in general you want to make. No matter what you're trying to show off in your video, make sure that you look good doing it. People respond well to someone who can present their ideas or processes in a confident and at least seemingly competent way. They don't actually need to know that something took you 4 times as long as it should have done, unless that's part of your presentation style, but more on that in a minute. They want to see highlights, the linear progression of your idea and how it worked out in the end, even if it didn't. This is not to say that you have to lie to people. If you struggled with something or if something didn't work, then I recommend telling us. In doing that, you can hopefully talk about what you've learned from the process of it going wrong, and that personal growth, believe it or not, also shows that you're competent. Your audience most likely also develops video games, or if they don't, they'd like to, and it shows a maturity and high level of experience on your part to be able to say, yes, this did not work, here is how I've grown from that and what lessons you can take away from it, because everybody knows that nothing ever actually goes that smoothly. This is why I generally like to make my devlogs after I've done something that I suppose you'd class as a milestone. Either I've sorted out the graphics or the basic gameplay underneath, or some big thing that most likely I've struggled with a lot. Summarising it at the end lets me come in with a conclusion, my findings on it, and why I made the choices I did that led me to the outcome that I got. Basically, it shows that I know what I'm talking about, even if sometimes I didn't, because I've done it now. A big part of giving you the impression that I know what I'm doing is because I speak in very long, very well-pronounced sentences with my lovely, wonderful voice that everybody loves because I sound brilliant, right? That's what that is. Would you believe me if I told you it's all a sham? Alright, it's not. This is still me talking. I'm not like an AI robot or something. But the confidence that I talk with isn't off the cuff. I'm not sat here right now making all of this up on the spot, riffing like an improv group and just spewing wisdom from my pores like a fountain of knowledge. What I'm trying to say is that this is scripted. I wrote it already and my devlog videos are all the same way. I have the luxury of being able to sit and think about what it is I want to tell you, what I want to focus on and how I want to do it. And that means I can write up words that get that point across, then take my time in rehearsing and recording them. In doing that, when you put it all together, I sound like I know what I'm doing, and that makes me sound confident. If you ever hear me talk out loud without a script, which you can do if you go check out LTGDX, which is my other channel where I do sort of vloggy updates about my life and opinions I'm having, you'll notice that I use a lot of pointless connecting words and phrases like, well, like, or I guess, and every other word is probably or or ph, which sounds a lot less professional and confident than what you're hearing now. You can't spell confidence without the word con, and the truth is, if you want to present yourself as confident, you've got to just con people into believing you. Pretend. Act. Even if you don't believe it yourself, just imagine that you do and then do that. Time for me to let you in on a little behind the scenes secret. When I've recorded my narration for a video, what I do is go into Audacity, grab the whole thing and increase the tempo by 2 or 3%. Not enough that people notice I'm talking faster, but enough that it just naturally speeds up the way that I talk. This has the added bonus of cutting down on the length of the audio so I have less editing to do, while also making me sound like I'm just reeling off point after brilliant point and impressing people with my genius. And don't feel like you have to put your first take of a recording down into the actual video. Trust me, none of the other people you've actually heard of will do that. None of them at all. Even the funny ones. Speaking of which, this is going to sound harsh, but somebody needs to say it to you, and I respect you enough for it to be me. If you're not funny, please don't try and be funny. Yes, Zane, I hear you cry, but you're not funny and you keep trying. First of all, I'm hilarious, but more broadly, that's not what I mean. Part of my real personality in real life with actual people is to make jokes. A lot. I am sarcastic, cynical, pessimistic and goofy. I will make a joke out of anything, and if it sounds incredibly tedious to know me, well, feel sympathy for my poor wife. But the point is, even if you don't find me funny, my normal personality every day involves me at least trying to be funny even when I'm not being recorded. That's just how I am as a person, and that makes it much easier to try and write jokes into my devlog scripts because I write like an idealistic version of how I normally talk. Only you will know if that's actually you or not, and I beg of you to please take a long, hard look at yourself and figure out if you are actually the kind of person who is funny, even if nobody laughs at you, because the easiest way to come across well on YouTube, or any media at all, really, is to take your personality that you already have and crank it up to an almost comical extreme. I do this all the time. Contrary to what you might have heard in some of my devlogs, I don't actually consider myself a golden god in real life. Nobody's that arrogant, and if they were, you wouldn't want to know them. I also balance this out occasionally in the videos with overly dramatic self-deprecation, as if I'm having a sudden self-esteem related anxiety attack. That's definitely not real life either. Definitely not. I'm fine. I promise, I just suck at everything and nobody likes me, and see, I just did it just now. Did you catch that? Anyway, my point is, find out who you are and then use that personality in your videos, dialed up as far as it'll go. If it's funny, great. If not, don't worry about it. Remember when I mentioned Mrs. before? He's not funny. No offense if you ever see this, Miz, you're amazing. But he doesn't try to be. He just comes on, bangs out a series of incredibly impressive achievements in a confident sounding monotone, and then leaves. Brilliant. Love it. More of that, please. Play around and find out what makes you feel comfortable and represented truthfully, even if it's a bit embellished in your videos. They'll come across as more natural and believable, and you'll feel better making them. It's a win-win. Speaking of Mrs. one of the things he's incredibly good at is probably the most important point of all. You clicked on this video because you want to know how to make a devlog. I, over the course of the last 10 minutes or so, have talked you through how to make a devlog. You know, roughly speaking. That means that you have got what you wanted from this video. I fulfilled the promise of the title, and you're going to click like, subscribe, and then go show this to all the wannabe YouTube game devs you know, because clearly it's changed your life and you can't wait to spread the wisdom of this golden god to the world, obviously. My point is, I gave you something you were looking for. This video has value to you, and the most important thing you can do with any devlog at all is try and provide some value. The thing to remember is that other than folks like Danny, who obviously I love, you're not making devlogs for a general purpose audience. You're making them for other people who are interested in game development. Now, why they're interested isn't really up to you. I, for example, often go on YouTube, type in the word devlog, sort by newest upload, and just watch what comes up. Because I'm always on the lookout for people making stuff because I think it's cool. The value to me is just in watching people trying to discover themselves and their games and making cool things. You don't need to do much to get me watching, to be honest. But if you want to build an audience, you need to do more than that. I, for example, try and frame all of my videos around a specific educational question or topic. Things like how to approach art when you're bad at art, or how to take and utilise feedback when you've done some playtesting. Stuff that people might be searching for and if they're making a video game might want or even need to know. So let's review. How do you make a devlog series? Decide if you want to do technical or design-based devlogs. Figure out a way to at least look competent in what you're doing. Pretend you're confident in what you're doing even if you're not. Find a unique personality that you have and feel comfortable presenting as, and always strive to provide value to your audience. There's more, of course, but I think I've rambled too long and you probably need to go and watch a bunch of Premiere Pro tutorials, because the one thing I haven't done in this video titled How to Make a Devlog Series for Your Indie Game is teach you how to make a devlog series for your indie game. You should probably also go and watch all of the people that I've shamelessly stolen clips from to put into this video, because you can learn a lot from all of them. I did, and it's how I managed to make this video in the first place. But if you've liked this video, then be sure to like this video and then subscribe for more videos like the video you just liked since you liked it, and I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.